This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. Very excited to be speaking with Deirdre O'Connell about the Penguin. How are you today?
I'm just fine. You're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, so that's good.
Fantastic. Well, what was your relationship before this with the whole world of Batman and comic books?
I mean, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, so it was that TV show with the car and black and white TV, and it was very odd, strange, theatrical TV at the time. It was its own thing. And then, of course, I grew up with comics, but I was more into the girl world, Archie and Veronica. And I was a very conventional girl, so I did not get into the Batman. Um, yeah, I would say it was that TV show, but not a whole hell of a lot of a relationship to it. I did not have a strong passion for it. I watched all of those Batman movies with, they were so incredible as just like huge operatic stories and myths and amazing pieces of art. So I liked them quite a lot, but it wasn't like was following like, ooh, that person lived on that street in the comic in with the 50s and now they live on that street. I wasn't one of those guys. Um, so yeah, so I came to it pure. I came to it pure as the driven snow, like a child.
What was your attraction to the role and the project in general?
The original attraction were two things, and one was the script, which was so beautiful on the page. It had this really particular tone and this particular heart to it. It felt like it was an old tiny gangster kind of a angle, but it was also the literally the words on the page, literally the stage directions were thrilling and hilarious and interesting. So then, of course, there was the role that Lauren wrote. I had never seen anything quite like her. She reminded me a lot of my grandparents on my mom's side. There was a world where they were New Yorkers and they were in showbiz, and there was a kind of toughness. And my great great aunts lived in New York in these apartments, and so I knew these ladies a little bit. I had grown up with these kinds of ladies that had a certain toughness and a certain pleasure in being uh, tough urban broads and knowing about all this stuff. So I got Francis, from my blood. Um, but I gotta say, the main thing was watching Colin in that Batman movie and just being aghast, like what the hell was he doing? How was he doing it? Who was this person? It made me laugh so hard so many times. I just found it breathtaking. It was so deep and it was so hilarious. And I didn't know how they made it. So I kind of feel like that piece of art that was that performance needed, how do you honor that? How do you make something worthy of that? Was kind of the basic question of how do you make a how do you make it? Well, maybe 8 hours. Maybe in 8 hours, you can possibly speak to the question of who the fuck is that guy? I mean, of course, we know Penguin is. He's a myth in all of the Batmans, but there was something so specific about that performance that just like I found that so thrilling. So it's kind of like, well, trying to answer that question and trying to be worthy of that question is the work of this TV show. And that seemed like really worthy work.
What is it like acting opposite Colin? Do you feel like it is Colin, or do you feel like it's something else entirely?
It's something else entirely. I mean, I would have been, I'm not, I would have been very intimidated if I had it. If I'm sure I would have gotten over it because he's a sweetie, but I would have been intimidated by the Colin Farrellness of it all. And I never ever, I mean, I think I met him one time. We had like a little 10-minute tea and went like, hello. And then the first time we really spent time together was the camera test, and he was in full regalia. He was in his full Oz regalia, and I was never with him that he wasn't in full Oz regalia. Um, and I was with him for a year. So it was a remarkable thing to be with somebody who wasn't. And it wasn't like we were all methody and talking like our characters, but we did have quite the task with our dialects and quite the task with our with the you know horrifying and wondrous things that our characters were going through in our relationship. So we didn't spend a lot of time sitting and saying like, what did you eat for breakfast? Although we did ask each other those questions, but our work was pretty like we would show up and we would be those guys, and it was a magical relationship. It was instant. We never talked about it. We never talked about our characters. Somehow we both were on the same page in this way that does not happen very often. And I don't mean that negatively about other. It's just when that happens, you're so blessed. And so we, some lightning struck us, and we just got to be like, oh, you. And it started from the camera test. We were just, oh, you, game on. And we just felt so free, and we were just messing with each other from the beginning, and we would just mess with everybody else and mess with each other. So we just found a connector where we really we could dive pretty deep without thinking about it and without talking about it. And we could also like find stuff with each other. We were remarkably compatible with it. And I mean, he was in his full Oz regalia, so it was a very I was very compatible with this guy, Oz. um yeah, we were lucky, we were blessed, we were really lucky, and people say that a lot, but in this case it was just remarkably true. And yeah, from the second we started our camera test to the second we started the first scene we had to shoot, and then we just through the year, which is very difficult, had 6 months off in the middle of it, and the stuff we had to do was hard, and we were just like connected. We'd always be, if I was like, do you think that we should be on the floor right there? You'd be like, exactly, that's exactly what I was thinking. We should get on the floor. Okay. And we'd be like, we're getting on the floor, you guys. That was kind of how it was.
How do you feel about Frances as a mother?
She's a fantastic mother. How do I feel? Well, it's interesting because the trope, is obviously this poor guy has been created, has been searching for love his whole life, has been turned into a monster by the fact that he had a mother who did not offer him the kind of love that a normal human gets. So that's the trope, that's the idea. But as we learn, as the story unfolds in Lauren's hands, very, very delicately, like a clock, you gradually just learn piece by piece what their origin story is. By the end, I feel like what you find out is that yes, she had, she had an idea of how she could justify what she was doing, which was not punish the person who killed her children, who is also her child. So she was just in this. So I think by the end, one might think, depending on your own life and your own childhood and your own perspective on parenting and kids, which changes constantly, as I'm sure you can be like, well, actually, in the context of everything that happened, she did a pretty good job by not just, well, killing him. So it's like it was kill him or do the best you could. But there's also a way that I think they just love each other, almost to the point where it's a little bit of a mess, because they are utterly dependent on each other, and they utterly and they're in this knot with this secret. But they're both like ferocious people, and their main relationship is life is each other. I also think that because she has, I mean, I'm going on and on, but I guess that's the point, right? Because she has Lewy body dementia, she's very dependent. And I think Frances is like I would be, like so many of us would be, furious at her caregiver, furious at the person who gets to make the decisions on her behalf because she feels like her helplessness is her enemy. And so, then he becomes her enemy in that. I just think it's a kind of irrational rage that you get at the person who's speaking, telling you the truth, which is that you can't take care of yourself anymore. But she's also furious at him for not taking better care of her. So, but I think that's so common in those situations, particularly with dementia, where you can't quite remember what happened the day before. And I know both my parents suffered much more gracefully, are suffering much more gracefully with so much class and kindness with that disease. Francis is having a little bit of a hard time with the classic kindness, but I know it too well, and I know how angry it can make a person, and how desperately sad it can make a person, and how hard it is to be the kid. I watch Colin work with Oz's dilemma of like, Mom, wake up. That's all of our impulses, like, Mom, wake up. And you learn that that's not the way to do it, but it goes so against your instincts, because you think if you could wake them up, you could wake them up. Seems natural, and it seems like they're being lazy or manipulative when they actually can't. So she's so complicated, because sometimes she's truly ahead of the game and is being manipulative. And one of the things that's interesting about Louis, as opposed to, for example, Alzheimer's, is that it does come and go. So one day you could wake up and you could just be like, what the hell is going on? How did you get me in this situation? And you could be completely in charge, the way that she is with Sophia, for example. I feel like that galvanizes her, and she's got all her marbles, which means she's the smartest person in the room. She's mostly used to being the smartest person in the room. Now, she tries to limit who's in the room with her, but she's often the smartest person in the room, and to be the most helpless person in the room makes her crazy.
How do you feel that people have responded to this character?
Well, I think that for a lot of people, unfortunately, I don't know why, but maybe it's because of the that we're healthier, so that we live longer, so that more people have older parents who are dealing with these very problems, or we're all terrified of that particular problem. It's just very vivid to us right now. Lewy body dementia itself, that disease, not to get too in the weeds about it, but that disease it's just become clarified that disease is different from Alzheimer's, is different from Parkinson's, which is important only in that you can mismedicate it really easily. So it's important to know the difference. It's important to have it properly diagnosed. It's almost impossible to do. But that said, I feel like people have a lot of fear and empathy and confused feelings around elder parents who are becoming children in some ways. And so I always, and whoever we are, we become a little more that when that starts to happen to us. So if you're a tough broad who's hard on your kid, and then you become a tougher broad who's harder on your kid.
Well, I appreciate all of your thoughtful analysis of this character, what you put into it. Before I let you go, what are you watching these days? What have you seen on TV recently that stuck with you?
I don't even want to say it. Adolescence. The world is different. The world of what people can make on television, with the context of having a TV series, has been utterly changed by that show. That's how I feel about it. I feel very strongly about it. I feel like it's just a remarkable piece of art that just, we are altered, and should step up. Everybody should step up and be like, okay, let's give the artists all the money, give them all the time, say, make what you need to make, make it in the eccentric way that you think you need to make it, go for it. I feel like that show really said that in this really specific way. I feel like I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Penguin does it too, in the almost the opposite way. That Lauren made a very, very there's a lot of secret feminism in that show. Or maybe not so secret, but there's a lot of stuff knit into that show that's very yeah, that takes it way beyond being, what it is on paper. And I think that's another sort of gauntlet that got thrown down very differently. Yeah, that's what I'll say.
Yeah, it's a great answer. I really appreciate your time. It was such a pleasure to speak with you and looking forward to whatever's next for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was nice to talk to you. Bye.